Quotation, empty piece of paper, time starts now.
When former presidential candidate Jerry Johnson said, "What is Aleppo?" he pretty much eliminated his entire chance of winning the 2016 presidential election. You see, as the candidate for the Libertarian Party, CNN was asking him about the geopolitics in Syria. And you'd think that someone running for president would know one of the biggest cities in Syria. But he didn't. And his gaffe made him look ridiculous on national television. But this idea of our dumb words being used against us is reflective in the Czech proverb that states, "When the fool knows to be silent, they will sit amongst the wise." What this proverb is saying is that when the ignorant learn to be quiet, it's a sign of intellect. We can agree with this proverb for two key reasons. First, because people are tempted to speak even when they don't know what they're talking about. And second, because smart people know when to be quiet. But the first reason that this Czech proverb is absolutely correct, and that when the ignorant learn to be quiet, it's a sign of intellect, because first, people are tempted to speak even when they don't know when they're talking about. We can see why that's true for two reasons, or through two examples. First, through Theodor Adorno, and second, through Prince Hubertus. But first, Theodor Adorno was a philosopher who had a pretty simple theory regarding human temptation. He explained that our biggest ill as a species is that we too often give in to temptation, even though it may end up being to our detriment. This is exactly why the ignorant will often speak even when they don't know what they're talking about. And we can see this exactly through Prince Hubertus, who tried to become infamous as an Olympic skier from Mexico. But part of the problem with that is that there aren't exactly a lot of mountains in Mexico, or slopes. So despite the fact that everyone in his village told him, "Hey, don't do this, it's a really bad idea," Prince Hubertus has tried for the past 16 years to be a skier, announcing to his entire village, "I'm going to win the Olympic gold medal." And he's never placed higher than second to last. Ultimately, this man, Prince Hubertus, shows that even when he doesn't know what he's talking about, he was tempted, like the Adorno explained, to speak, and thus made a fool of himself, showing the first reason that this proverb is correct, because people are tempted to speak even when they don't know what they're talking about. But the second reason that this proverb is absolutely correct, and that when the ignorant learn to be quiet, it's a sign of intellect, is because second, smart people know when to be quiet. We can see this through the spiral of silence and apply it to Henry Waxman. But first, the spiral of silence is a theory in the field of communication that explains that we as people base what we say off of the perceived reaction of others. So, if we feel that something we say is going to be dumb, we aren't going to say it if we're smart because we don't want to be outcast by others. This is exactly the case with Henry Waxman, a political consultant from 1975 to 2015, who has had major implications on US policy, despite the fact that you've probably never heard of the guy. And that's for a good reason. You see, Henry Waxman has been part of the reason that big tobacco was taken down. He got women and children included in Medicaid, and he was part of the Clean Air and Water Act. But despite these major accomplishments, he likes to keep a low profile because in his book he explains that allowed him to be a better policymaker. Because if he wasn't on bright television, with the flashing lights and the attention on him, then there wouldn't be as much backlash for any gaffes that he has if he were to say something not appropriate at the time. And so because he took the silent route and was diligent in his work, avoiding the castration that would come if he spoke ill in terms of what his peers would think, this shows the second reason why this quotation is correct, because smart people know when to be quiet. Thus, when returning to the Czech proverb that states, "When the fool knows to be silent, they will sit amongst the wise," what this proverb is saying is that when ignorant people learn to be quiet, it's a sign of intellect. We agreed with this for two reasons. First, because people are tempted to speak even when they don't know what they're talking about, and we saw this through Theodore Adorno's theory of temptation, applied it to Prince Hubertus. But second, we saw that smart people know when to be quiet. We saw this through the spiral of silence and applied it to Henry Waxman. At the end of the day, Gary Johnson is not a name that anyone needs to remember, because if you don't even know what Aleppo is, you're not worthy of being a president.